Great. Hi, everyone, and welcome to my conversation series where I have really easygoing conversations with people who can help impact the lives of widows. And my conversations with experts range from financial advisors to real estate agents and then therapists to people who work in the wellness space. As you've probably heard me say, one of the things that I've learned personally is that grief doesn't just live in your brain. It lives in your body. And I'm excited to welcome Kyle to our conversation. I'll let him introduce himself. As you all know, if you've seen these, I don't introduce anybody because nobody can introduce themselves better than themselves. And I think it's really weird when people read off a script and read someone's bio and it's just awkward for everyone. Anyway, so I'll let Kyle introduce himself and then we'll just get into a few questions.
Lovely. Hi, everyone. My name is Kyle Lam. I'm a sound practitioner here in Southern California. I've been hosting different kinds of sound bath journeys, sound bath meditations for about 8 years now. I used to work in corporate finance, and so I come from that kind of, type of background, and I shifted into the world of sound healing around 2017 just for fun. Decided to go into full time 2021. And since then, I've had the honor of not only hosting different kinds of sound baths here in Southern California, but we also work with different wellness resorts across the country to host sound healing programs. I've traveled to different states to host our events and trainings too as well. And I also have the opportunity and pleasure to be able to train students, not only domestically, but internationally, in the art of sound healing to share with their community. And one thing I love about sound healing is its impact, not only on everyday stress, but also for really deep emotional healing too as well. And I've seen a lot of individuals really radically transform their lives through sound healing. So I used to play music when I was younger, so my
I
philosophy,
was, yeah, I was gonna ask you, you went from finance to sounds, and you
yeah.
said you just did it for fun. Like, what was,
Yeah, and so my whole philosophy, just because I used to play music and I'm a big music lover, is that we already have such a strong relationship with music through our favorite artists, genres, songs, and tracks. And so sound healing basically applies the principles and fundamentals of music, notes, harmonics, frequencies, vibration in a very meditative setting too as well. So that's the reason why I love doing sound baths. I haven't looked back since then. But yeah, that's a little short summary about me.
yeah, no, that's really interesting. I have participated in a pretty extensive mental health outpatient program. And I think like every couple of weeks we have a session around music. And
Yeah.
it's always like create the playlist of your life, or it'll connect like when you're feeling angry, you listen to this, when you're feeling sad, when you're feeling happy. And so music's a really big part of my life too. In fact, I literally just sent a text to my daughter. It's 2:15 here in Massachusetts, and I was like, "Do you want to go to a concert tonight?" And she was like, "Really?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it."
Yeah.
There's a show and an artist that is playing here. So yes, music is a part of my life too, but it is really interesting how music connects to emotions. Like it's a really powerful, whether it's the lyrics or the melody or the artist or what have you. So I see that. And so, when it comes to, the impact on the body, I mean, you talked about, kind of helping with this deep, deep emotional, perhaps it's trauma experiences. In my world, the women that I work with most frequently are widows and they have gone through an incredibly traumatic experience. And which oftentimes causes, physical paralysis or
Yeah.
physical pain even. And so what's kind of the, without giving away your secret sauce, what is really the connection between the sound and the healing of the body?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, a lot of our emotional pain tends to manifest itself into physical tension, right? That's why even when you go to massages, even, right, it can get a little emotional just because all that tension that you're holding on to stems from some kind of emotional trauma that has happened to you, either, really recently or from a while back too, just depending on how good the practitioner is too. And one of the biggest components about sound healing is actually vibration. So that's the main difference between, let's say, going to a sound bath versus listening to music on Spotify, YouTube, or any other streaming services. There's that vibrational component to it. So when you become immersed in a sound bath journey, you're not only getting the sounds and frequencies from these instruments, but a lot of these, like the gong behind me, for example, carries a very deep vibration. And that vibration is able to kind of penetrate and permeate into our body, or into the cells into our body too, as well, to alleviate any of that tension that we may have. And so when that tension gets released, of course, all those emotions, sensations, visions, and memories that may be attached to that gets released too as well. So that's why a lot of people love going to sound baths versus just listening to them through their headphones or speakers, because they get that physical alleviation along with that mental and emotional alleviation too as well.
Yeah. Do you see like a community impact too, where there's people who are experiencing something together and like how, their energy impacts the energy in the room and each other?
Yeah, so I always like to greet everyone whenever they come to our events too as well. And not only do I like to have that kind of face-to-face rapport, but it gives me a good indication about what people are going through, because even though you may say something, a lot of your physical cues give it away, right? Like your eye, your facial expressions, even how you carry your body too as well. And so oftentimes, and even of course, sometimes we'll ask people how they're doing and they may share either a little or a lot, but you tend to see that there's a lot of similarities in what people go through energetically and emotionally too as well. And so we're able to kind of curate the theme of the sound bath towards that, or even to curate the sound journey in specific with different harmonies, melodies, volumes and intensities to be able to mitigate the type of relief that we want those participants to get to as well. But, I think a lot of us go through very similar types of worries and stresses. We get anxiety over the same thing because we're so connected as a community energetically too as well. So oftentimes when we feel a certain way and we're really unsure the reason why, of course there could be a lot of, personal instances that causes that too, but oftentimes it's a collective thing too as well, right? Not to say that we're feeling everyone else's energies, but like, and it's impacting us
Sometimes we do.
personally, maybe a little bit of that, but there's a lot of ties and connections between those around us, especially in our local communities too as well, because what happens in our local community doesn't just affect, one person, it affects us as a whole too. Right. And
Yeah.
so when we do our events too, I notice people are always sharing that they're always going through something. They're experiencing something heavy, or even, energetically, they're maybe not feeling as much high energy as they were previously. They may be feeling low energy too as well. So it's always interesting to see the similarities that people go through in their lives. And this impacts people, I think, of all different, not only age ranges, but cultural and ethnic backgrounds too as well. There's not kind of one type of demographic in the community that experiences everything. It's oftentimes just all of us in general.
Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons why I asked that question is because, I think that, and I know you do some one-on-one work as well, and I've seen through my wellness retreats that I run for widows that I do have the practitioners do one-on-one sessions often. However, it's when the community is together in a room experiencing something together, it's so much more powerful.
Yeah.
And essentially, when you think about it, the women that arrive at my retreats are strangers. I mean, what binds them together is this, unfortunate situation that they've lost their partner or their spouse. However, again, it's just these strangers coming into a room, experiencing, some type of wellness modality, and there's just something really magical that happens. And when it ends and everybody kind of looks at each other and was like, wow, like that was, and I really believe that I believe, my whole platform, my whole business is based on community, building communities. And I think that this is, sound baths are a really beautiful way to build communities. Um,
Yeah. And when I used to do a lot of Kundalini yoga, my teacher always say this quote is that, when community gathers together, great transformation takes place because not only are you, being in a place where you're comfortable expressing your own energy, you're among a lot of other people doing the same thing too.
mm,
That synchronistic,
yeah.
that synchronization of everyone's energy tends to really augment the experience that people have, that the group has collectively too as well. That's why, meditating on your own is obviously quite powerful. Meditating with a group of 20 other people is even more powerful too. And there's been times when, in our meditation classes, when I used to go to them as a participant, there's a certain high that you get just
Mhm.
for being around a lot of high energy people, right? And even in a sound bath setting, there's this almost collective support that you're getting from
Mhm.
people around you, even though you may not know their names,
Right, right.
stories, who they are. Everyone's there for the same reason. And so subconsciously, everyone is kind of elevating and supporting one another and rooting for
Yeah.
everyone too as well. And in many ways, too, I love that you brought up that a lot of people don't know each other. A lot of us are very familiar with the fact that we're more comfortable sharing our deepest, darkest secrets to strangers, right? Because
Yes.
we know there's not going to be as much direct judgment probably from them as someone that we know. But
Right.
the same principle when we go to a group class or a sound bath or whatever
Mhm.
it is as well, just the fact that we're around a lot of people we don't know tends to give us a little bit more ease to be able to be vulnerable and express ourselves. And I think that's very powerful. And even oftentimes, I've seen some people come together as in a group as friends. They still have a really good time, but oftentimes some of them do not have as of a deep of experience as they would like, just because a lot of their focus is,
What is
on
my friend thinking? I'm worried about what they
exactly.
were looking at it, what I'm doing. Yeah,
Exactly,
no, I get that.
exactly. So it can be quite powerful to be in a room full of strangers, especially, ones that revolve around grief and, kind of wanting that support from other people who are also sharing in that same grief too.
Right. Do you, you know, do you have any, I don't know if preference is the right word, but do you see people come back over and over again? Do you see,
I
like, is it a practice like meditation where it's something that you work at and you do, consistently and you get more out of it because of that consistency? Or, and it's probably both. It's probably both. Or is it something that you come to, once or twice a year that you get this, you know, amazing
Yeah,
experience from? It's
there's
probably
there's
both, but
all types of consistencies, I should say. There are some people who only come maybe every few months, I maybe only see them once or twice a year. A lot of it has to do with their schedules, I think, more
yeah.
than actually their desire to want to come or their need to come, because I think in this day and age, we have so much going on. And, in Western culture, especially, we're not the most prepared at taking care of ourselves and compared
Mhm.
to some other cultures. So I think a lot of it really has to do from a scheduling standpoint, but I have quite a number of clients that come on a regular basis. That could be either weekly, bi-weekly,
Mhm.
monthly, quarterly.
Right.
And for a lot of people, they tend to come because it allows them to maintain their center. It
Mhm.
allows them to maintain a balance of their well-being so that way they're not affected by it. They can kind of mitigate and control anything that may attempt to throw them off from their center. I have a lot of people also who may have gone through something really traumatic who they'll come quite often because it helps them as they go every step of the journey too as well, right? And
Yeah.
this is especially important with grief, loss, not just from, a spouse or a partner, but just a loss of anything in their lives too as well, right? Whether it's a relationship, whether it's, a loss in their career, a loss in their
Mhm.
identity too as well. I think one of the most common groups of people that come are people who recently gone through separation or are undergoing divorce. That's one of the
Hmm.
biggest ones too, because there's a lot of emotional support that they need to maintain in themselves to go through, each step of that separation process too. And, even people who have, suffered a loss, whether it's their spouse, their partner, or their family member, they tend to come quite often too as well, because it not only helps them to give them a lot of closure, but it also helps them to really, this is kind of where we go into more into the esoteric part of sound healing, is that it tends to open up channels in their consciousness that helps them to commune or communicate with their loved ones that have passed on to as well, right? It kind of opens up the ethereal realm, so to speak,
Hmm.
so that way they can communicate with them because the spirits of beyond, they don't communicate by speaking English, right? Or popping up like as a ghost or anything.
Right,
Oftentimes,
right, right.
they give us little subtleties, cues, whispers, and hints. But a lot of it too is what I love about sound baths is that it really helps to open up all of our senses, not just physically, but
Mhm.
energetically too as well. And so we can then begin to really not only feel but understand beyond what we see with our own two eyes and be able to really clarify those messages that we're getting either from the people that we've lost in our lives too as well, or just just spirit in general or God in general or however you want to define it to be, so that way we can get those internal messages that help us to make those shifts in our lives that help to propel us more forward too. And that's one of the big things I love about sound baths is people get that clarity, they get that connection, but they get that confidence too, and be able to really trust in those insights and inspirations that they're receiving internally so that they can move forward with their lives.
That's fascinating. Again, I kind of came into this conversation really wanting to learn more about the physical part of it and, kind of without going like too deep into it, but,
Yeah,
you talked
yeah.
about the vibration piece of it and how, it kind of releases, parts of our body that we may be tense in or, kind of doing that body scan and like looking for the places that need to be. But I didn't really know much about kind of like you were talking about, like the connection to the subconscious connection that it also opens up for people. And I think that, people going through grief are constantly looking for signs, if you will. And that's anything from a bird, a cardinal to a dragonfly to angel numbers, there's, we grasp onto anything that makes us feel like our loved ones are communicating with us. And I think, understanding better myself that sound baths also help in that, seeking for, communication, is just fascinating to me.
Yeah, and if you think about when you listen to music, and
Mm,
especially when you're going through a certain type of trial or tribulation in your life, there's that opening of your emotions, and you feel
absolutely.
more comfortable pouring out
Hmm.
whatever's within you. And then after that, you feel this certain lightness. And also afterwards, you begin to notice things that you didn't notice before. And
Hmm.
that's the beauty about sound is that it gives you an opportunity to really open up all of your senses so that you can connect with the things that you would not normally connect to because there's a lot of distractions going on within your mind and your heart too as well. So what we're doing is providing a really clear channel for you to really connect to those little details, the ones that you may not
Hmm.
have noticed before, and build your relationship with whatever it is that you define those details to be with for in your
Right.
life too as well. Right. And so that's why I love it because it helps us to, again, trust, our own intuition and to block off that ego in our mind that tells us, no, it's not that. Because our heart always knows what's best for us. And that's the first reaction, respond that we always have. Our ego is very good to, pile onto it after that and
Right.
tell us something different, which, it has its purpose.
Yep, it's a
I'm
coping
not,
mechanism
it's
for
coping, and
sure.
I'm not downing at all. But when
Yeah,
it comes
no.
to our emotions,
Mhm.
our emotions are basically messengers from our hearts. And
Mhm.
so it's always important to sit with our emotions rather than move on from it. And so sound baths, among, other modalities, really helps us to, embrace and be present with it and just notice, what it is that we connect with after we have the opportunity to open up to those emotions.
I personally wish I knew more about this when I first lost Jack. I share very openly that it took me about, and it's only been 2 years since he passed, but it took me a little over a year to actually have feelings. They were there. They were just, I was like a go, go, go person. I'm gonna outrun the grief. And then I have what I affectionately call my crash out, where it all just kind of came down on me and I didn't know what to do with it. Um, I was just talking about this with somebody recently. Like sadness was not a feeling that I was familiar with. And I have gratitude for that. It wasn't, I've been through traumatic things in my life, but nothing, anger I was familiar with. The kind of fight and flight, I was familiar with, frustration, chaos, but sadness just wasn't a feeling that I knew what to do with. And I've worked really hard personally to figure that out. And so using sound baths as a way to kind of connect with those feelings, I think is really important. And I can only speak for the widow community because it's hard to find those feelings because you're taught to push them down, or society tells us to push them down, or quite frankly, you're so busy. There's so many logistical parts of widowhood that like can overwhelm you, within 20 seconds or less, that
Yeah.
you stop listening to yourself and what you really need. And so I think, this is a beautiful way to engage with yourself and your own emotions.
Yeah, and there's a big fear component too. We
Of
fear
course.
what we'll experience or what we'll become, right?
Right.
If we allow it to kind of take over, because for a lot of us, it's so unfamiliar territory, right? It's the
Mhm.
unknown. It's in that realm of the unknown, and so most of us have that fear of the unknown because it's out of our control, so to speak.
Right.
So when we be able to kind of embrace that, part of doing that, what we're doing is also embracing the unknown, the unfamiliar too. And in many ways, that's also very powerful because it relinquishes the control that fear has within us. So beyond even navigating through, the loss and, how we're going to identify ourselves now, going through this loss and what's going to happen to us after that too, it stems to every part of our lives too, as well, to like relinquish control of that fear. So that way we can continue moving forward with all aspects of our lives, knowing that the unknown is always going to be known to us. Right.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. And I think is, really helpful for people to understand. And I think the last aspect that I'll touch on, that you provide and that other, is the safety aspect. Because you are in a safe, you're not laying in your driveway participating in a sound bath when there's
Yeah.
cars driving by and your kids are screaming out the window and what have you. Like, I mean, let's just like, that's the reality. You're going into a space that's safe and contained to participate in a sound bath. You are kind of stepping away from life. And that's, when I think about and I talk about my retreats and why I started doing, I needed to step away from my life. And so I went on a retreat. It wasn't a widow retreat, in Costa Rica. And, I always, I say it helped to refill my cup and give, help to, from a restorative perspective, because I was like flat out. I was like, I can't deal with anyone. But, I had wished I connected more with the participants, which is why I started these retreats. And so, again, even if it's an hour or 2 hours that they're with you, it is a much needed escape from life.
Yeah, and that's why I tell people, in this hour, an hour and a half, right, you disconnect from your external environment and you connect with your internal environment. And
Yeah,
even
I
though it's
love
only for
that.
an hour and a half, that amount of time can, procure really radical results because the time that we spend for ourselves, it's not in the same kind of wavelength as when we spend time doing things in the external environment,
Yeah,
right? It's much more powerful and potent. And, we get that with a lot of moms, right? It's like it's
yeah,
their 1 hour that they have
yeah.
purely focus on themselves. And oftentimes that's really enough. It's kind of like a power nap.
Mhm.
Sometimes
Yeah.
a 20-minute nap is really all you need. It seems very little,
I
but it
love
makes a
that. Yeah,
world of a
no,
difference. And that's the exact
absolutely.
same thing when we go to a sound bath, go to a meditation practice. Just that duration of time we're holding space for ourselves sets the kind of sets the how do I say this? Basically prepares our mind to basically deal with
For
whatever it
whatever's
is
to
for the
come
next,
after. Yeah.
24 hours or so.
Yeah. I mean, I always laugh. I thought, people would talk about self-care, and I thought that was like going to get a manicure or like, getting my hair done. Like I didn't know what self-care meant. And it's funny you mentioned the nap because I use naps as self-care all the time. It's my favorite form of self-care, I'm not gonna lie. I'm like, I'm out, I'm going to bed.
Exactly, exactly.
But, now I feel like I have so many more tools in my tool belt that represent self-care, attending a sound bath being one of them.
Yeah.
And I want other people to have those tools as well and to understand what self-care means because it's a word we throw around all the time. Like, oh, take care of yourself, practice self-care. Like, okay, but what does that actually mean?
And I think we're in this beautiful age right now where awareness of what's possible of one to achieve, not just, from like a professional standpoint, but, from a personal standpoint too as well. The mental and emotional well-being, not just physical well-being, is becoming quite vast, which is really
Mhm.
beautiful. And
Yeah.
having more exposure to different kind of modalities, including sound baths, is really beautiful.
Yeah.
And I'm not here to say sound bath is like the golden key to
Right, right,
everything in
right.
life, right? It's just one thing amongst many that can have a great impact. And it's always healthy to explore to see if whether that it does have that impact for you. And if it does, great. Now you have one more, tool to add to your tool belt. And if it doesn't, hopefully it opens up the gateway to something else, right?
Right.
But the whole point is you're allowing yourself to invite healing in whatever form that it needs to take. And it doesn't always have to be deep healing. Sometimes it
Yeah.
could just be superficial healing.
Break from life.
And it helps to control so that way nothing ever gets too deep too as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of getting too deep, I try and, keep these. I could talk forever about this. I feel like I find it so, impactful. I've watched, over the last 2 years, so many people's lives, including my own, be significantly impacted with this idea of self-care and what does it actually mean and what are the different modalities that we can look at to participate in our own lives and our own self-care. So what are the big things you have going on coming up? Like you're
Uh,
traveling the country, but I'll actually phrase it this way. Give me three things that you're excited about that's coming up in your world.
Yeah. Well, the biggest one I have to say is that we're producing a lot of sound bath material that can be accessed globally no matter where you are. And one of them is we do have two sound bath albums that you can actually stream online, whatever streaming platform that you use, whether it's Amazon Music, Apple Music, Spotify, even on YouTube. So if you look up my name, which is Kyle Lam, but then also add sound healing, just FYI, it's Lam without a B, Lam. Some people always put Lam, Lamb. But if you put Kyle Lam sound healing into your favorite streaming platform, you'll see both our albums too. And we've recently begun doing more of these YouTube sound baths, which include maybe like 5, 10, 20 minutes, sometimes even 45-minute long sound bath that you can, stream at home, in your office, wherever you are, whether you're on the go, to give you that little quick reset. And so I love doing be able to that, to not only, give people the free offering to experience it, but also help people to connect with, my philosophy and sound healing. So that's one of the biggest things that people can access immediately right now. Two is I have been teaching a lot more too. So if you have any interest in learning sound baths, we're actually launching our first online academy in a few weeks. We've
Mm.
done a few virtual trainings on not only how to play the instruments associated with sound healing, but also for a lot of people who may already do sound baths or may want to incorporate sound baths as a business. We're offering
Mhm.
some business masterminds too, which is really amazing. And then if you guys are ever in Southern California, we have a ton of cool events, but like I mentioned, I work with different wellness resorts. One of them is
Right.
Canyon Ranch. They're in the Berkshires and Lenox in Massachusetts. We have one in Tucson. They're opening one in Austin too as well. And so we do different programs there. And then I'm also in Florida too as well once a year to do some events and trainings near Tampa. So if you're anywhere on the East Coast or the southern states, you want to come to one of our events, there's there. If you come make it to California, that's where we do the majority of our offerings too. So you can
That's
always
really
learn more at my
exciting. Yeah.
my website's kylelamsoundhealing.com. You can find all more about us. And yeah, we live, breathe, and bleed sound baths.
Sound baths all the time
Yeah.
for everyone.
Yeah.
Well, you just gave me a really good segue with the number one exciting thing coming up is, having them, be accessible to people online. And I feel very grateful and lucky enough to have had Kyle record a specific sound bath for the widows in the It's Lifey community. And we will be hosting that event on July 7th at 7:30 Eastern Time, 4:30 Pacific. Yeah. And you can find more about that on my website on itslifey.com. Or if you go on the website, you click on Hope Hub. You can find out more about it there. If you're on, part of the newsletter, you'll find out there. We'll be promoting it all over the place. Because again, I really believe in the exposure piece of it. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And for so many people out there, um, don't know what a sound bath is. They've never even heard of it, let alone know what to expect from it. And so how can we create awareness for this powerful modality that can be transformative in people's lives? So I really appreciate you doing that for me and for my community.
Absolutely.
Um, yeah, so join us on July 7th for this experience. Please go and check out all of Kyle's albums and new recordings and happenings that are, going on all over the country. And thank you again for spending this time with me. And it was very educational and interesting and powerful. And, I hope that anybody who's listening to this goes and finds what's going on in your community in addition to what Kyle's doing too.
Yeah.
So
Thank you
thank
for
you
the
so
opportunity.
much.
I
Have a
appreciate
great day, everyone.